All right, y'all. Hey, hey, hey. Good evening now. I was going to say good afternoon, but I guess it's evening. So today, y'all know we're looking at test prep incentives, right? It's test prep. We're in countdown mode all over the country, everywhere. People are really, really focusing on and thinking about these test prep incentives, right? And for a lot of campuses, the reality is it is going over the questions over and over and over, right? Just multiple perspective, multiple representations, multiple exposures. And so one of the common things we know that people do, a common approach to make sure that and I'm gonna give air quotes, that the students stay motivated is to kind of have like these store type incentives, right? If you build a certain number of points up, you build a certain number of tickets, and then you can shop at the store, cash in your points, utilize your tickets, all these different things. But we're really, really going to examine a bit more closely just of the overall impact and considerations. So, y'all, so, first of all, again, the usual rewards, it might be in some spaces, they may say, okay, well, when you are getting at least a 70 or an 80% on this week's unit check-in, this checkpoint, then okay, right? You earn some bonus tickets, or you automatically get the right to and are granted access to go shop. In other spaces, it is more like a combination of things, where it may also include your attendance in addition with academics. It may also include your behavior. So more of an MTSS, a multi-tiered system approach, right? When standardized approach, when we're looking at the usual, I'll say. But even with that being said, imagine the the emphasis and the expectation, the requirement only being at that 80%. So I'll say this, at least on the academic side. And, for attendance, we definitely understand, right? You have to be there to learn and to grow and to progress. And for the behavioral side, yes, we want to minimize disruption. We want to minimize outrageous behaviors. But the reality is, when it comes to especially that academic piece, that academic side, then for a number of young people, it's really not fair. And I know people say, well, life isn't fair, life isn't, but if it's a bunch of things that we're judging and we're holding them to a different, not a different standard, but we're really working. If you look at the state of education, it's moving more towards a personalized, customized approach. So meeting people where they are, then why is it different when it's test prep time? For example, if the threshold is the 70%, 80% on the academic piece, but that young person has been at school every day, that young person does not cause any ripples, any waves behaviorally, right? They participate well, but maybe it's a concept where they really struggled, but they've progressed. Maybe formerly it was literally a 5, 10%, right? Maybe a 20%. Shout out to Rita Pearson, if you know what I'm talking about, right? But maybe they are at a 60%, right, this week for the unit assessment. But even though that was a 40 percentage point leap, it wasn't the 70, it wasn't the 80, so that young person would be disqualified. So full cycle moment. What happens? So you mean to tell me I came to school every day, I gave it all I got, and I made sure that even when I was having, those iffy moments, I kept it together or I expressed it appropriately. But because I did not meet this piece, I don't get any access, or I don't get the one prize. I don't get the snow cones treats that they say out here sometimes in Texas. I don't get the popcorn. I don't get to select something from the cart. So even though I had 2 out of 3, that one piece by a few percentage points nullifies everything. We said we're talking about impact and consideration. So what do you think is the emotional and motivational impact that that's having? If the point is for young people to be motivated by that, but that one thing and they were just so close that one thing canceled out the other two pieces, the other out of the three total considerations, then how would that feel? How would that feel? What are again the impacts that you think may be happening? So that's some of the requirements, y'all. Too, there are instances, right? Because people are people. Maybe we are executing with different levels of fidelity. I'll say on different day. Maybe the first round, you nope, everyone, you have to have the 70 to 80% academically, right? MTSS life, you have to have this percentage your attendance rate. You have to have no behavioral issues, no referrals, no lunch detentions, any of those things, and you held that line. But especially imagine this happens a couple times, and that child, the child we just talked about, if they had all those other things, maybe their academic was that particular unit, they went from 20% and grew to 60, right? Grew to 60%. Attendance was great, behavior was great, and that happened a couple times. A lot of people, especially teacher wise, a lot of people may say, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and slide this to this young person. They've been working hard. I see the progress. I'm gonna slide this to them. So then also becomes the issue of consistency or inconsistency in fidelity, right? Because again, we're feeling differently at different timings in the process, or we're trying to uphold these incentives for test prep. And because again, we're noticing a pattern and we're starting to notice how, you know what, it might not be as standardized, as equitable as we want it to be. So the overall execution, the overall execution part also comes out when we consider whether or not people are, I don't want to say it. If we want to consider whether or not people are really keeping up, right? Keeping up with their grading, with the attendance on time, right? If it's because it's going a little faster. Test prep mode is usually a bit faster. So if sometimes you're the person that's struggling with the time management, you're struggling with getting your grades completed on time, you're struggling with just that academic feedback, again, how consistent might that be when it's time to pull all these different areas for the young people? How consistent might it be? Okay. So again, at this particular point in time, the nation is in test prep mode, still some things to consider and the impact to reflect on. So what you want is you're like, oh, we want to make sure we keep the young people motivated. We want them to be focused. We want to make sure everybody's coming to school. We want to make sure that they're really, really focusing and they're learning. And we want to make sure that, right, we kind of hold this carrot. So maybe someone that maybe, gets a little spicy in class sometimes, that maybe they keep it together. Right. Maybe this will lessen the likelihood, right? This is the desire. Maybe this will lessen the likelihood of them showing out a little bit today. That's the desire. That's what people hope happens when we devise all these elaborate points and tickets and store situations. But the reality is, again, you mean to tell me that I'm not getting any credit for my progress, whether it's in any area? I kept using academic, but let's look at the other pieces of the coin. Maybe different things happen. I'm tardy to school 4 times a week, right? But when we got in this test prep mode, I was on time every day, right? I was struggling, I was sleeping, but I was on time every day. And then, my grade, I met the threshold academically, that's 70, 80%. Different schools have different stuff. But then behaviorally, I kept it cool, right? I didn't cause any particular waves, ripples. But no, let me start over. Let me start over because we so if we messed up one place, let me start over. So the person that maybe normally was tardy, they were only tardy 3 times, right? Versus the 5 times. But their grades were where they needed to be and they didn't cause any ripples or waves. But guess what? Math teacher life, right? You all know this. Y'all probably did the math really quickly too. 3 out of 5 days, that's 60%. That's still not the threshold that they need to be at. for academic, for attendance life, slash, especially usually for these test prep incentives. So why does that one thing cancel out again the other two? Slash, also my progress is not acknowledged, right? Even if it's not the fullness thereof, right? If it's not everything that everyone that checked all the boxes get, why is there not tiers, perhaps, to consider? We're talking about impact. What do we think the impact is on that young person? If I came on time 3 out of 5 times and y'all still didn't say anything, just like I normally would have come 0 out of 5 times on time, why would I try to improve? Right? So that very thing we wanted, the motivation in those 3 lanes, I'm just saying 3, but it's multiple lanes besides that, right? Those are the 3 most common. Why would I change that? Am I really motivated? Or is it possibly causing some frustration? Is it possibly causing anxiety even as well, right? And again, so we talked about the academic example, we talked about attendance. Okay, right? Somebody's laughing at me talking about, the kid wasn't as spicy. What about the spicy kids, right? The kids that they have a lot of personality, right? They normally bring it every day. They give everybody, every block, every period, everything they have the whole time, all day, every day. Yeah. But you know what? I really want to work hard. I understand we're in test prep mode. I do want to be successful. So I'm going to try my hardest to not end up with lunch detention. I'm going to try my hardest. Maybe I messed around and forgot. Maybe I did something and said something I shouldn't have done. Right? Maybe I ran in the hallway, something that caused some kind of behavioral infraction. And guess what? Now that wiped out my whole week, right? My whole week for test prep and center. Yeah, what if it happened on a Monday? What if it happened on a Tuesday? So again, this varying system, the usual framework for test prep incentives, we have to be considerate of these different tiers and possibly building in different layers, because often that one moment, and it could be one piece on any given day, that will wipe out the whole thing. So again, if the goal is to make sure that we're motivating kids, that we're keeping them in a positive headspace, and we're really curating, right, this atmosphere of learning, there's again a lot more to consider. I'll say a lot more to consider, because it's often holding or trying to push them towards this area of perfection. And as adults, we know that's not real. Perfection is not a real thing. So we're trying to notch them over to perfect attendance. We're trying to notch them over to perfect behavior, when who behaves perfectly every day as an adult? I don't know a person every day. I don't know anybody. Okay. And then even academics wise, again, what if we said it's that one unit? It's that one unit that you struggle with this year because you struggled with it previously, because you struggled with it the year before. Your geometry foundation just is not tight. Yeah, this was me, right? Other areas, I might have been killing it. But when it came to geometry for a while, my foundation was not solid. So when it was time to show what I knew, what? Cracks and crumbles. Cracks and crumbles. So you mean to tell me this one thing, this one day wipes out my whole week? We have to be super mindful of the considerations. What we're hoping to teach the young people versus what we're adding to them. That's 2 different things, right? I understand the intent, I understand the desire, but the reality of what we're adding to them, what we're giving them, tends to be a lot of frustration, inconsistencies, yeah, and definitely anxiety, definitely. So from here, so if we know that this is the usual, right? This is the status quo. Tends to be the go-to move. We have to try something different, y'all. People say it a million times, but how many people really internalize it, right? That insanity, the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different to happen. We have to switch it up. So with the switching it up, just thinking about, is it just another thing to do? Is it just another thing to incorporate? Going back to the inconsistencies with even how the system is usually executed, and the inconsistencies in how the system even operates, like the certain level of fidelity. We have got to do something different. So again, y'all, this is a great time to really lean into your MTSS criterion. When I say lean into the MTSS criteria, remember that it's not just about those thresholds. If we're gonna be honest, remember it is about the progress, right? Because there's a huge piece of MTSS that involves progress monitoring. So why not build in again a layer that not just looks at certain very important right criteria in indices, but it actually makes sure that we're monitoring their progress, right? So again, if we go back to that student that normally 0 out of 5 days they were on time, but they came on time 3 out of the 5, that's progress, right? Something should be said, something should be done, some type of encouragement, and plus, really with MTSS, this is something that was happening all along the way, right? So it's not something new. Academic wise, okay, Anika, you need some more work with this geometry unit. And so we went from 20% to now we're at 60%. Okay, that is some growth, some progress. Yeah. Y'all, so again, just really, really leaning into your MTSS criterion. So taking away this idea of perfection, because it doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. And we need to stop trying to give that to the young people. Stop giving them that anxiety in this curated reality. We have to take that away from them. So focusing on, again, the growth, the progress monitoring. All right. So at this point, because we have to be sure that we're not just doing something just to do it, that we're not just paying the lip service like, all right, everybody's getting tired. You know what we can do? We're going to make sure we keep everybody motivated with this store, with these tickets. Y'all, when the reality is, some in many situations is just making campuses, teachers check clients, I call it, right? Where they're checking the list. Yeah, I did that. I did that. And they're very minimally engaged and they're very minimally, they're just compliant, basically. So that's how you get that fake and inauthentic concern if we're not careful. Y'all, we said it before, and let me say this while we're talking about being careful about things that we're giving to the young people in this testing season, right? Some people talk about, energy and things like that, but, definitely emotion. If you have not started counting down yet, almost like the video says, oh no, baby, what is you doing? Right? What, y'all, if you have not started counting down yet, then it's time. It's time. Nobody, let alone an 8-year-old or 16-year-old, wants to look up and be within 10 days of a major moment, a major milestone in their life. So make sure that you're counting down, right? And to think that you had the opportunity to say something before it becomes like a sore spot, a moment of intense anxiety, right? Y'all, that will cause not even just anxiety, but a whole nother level of stress. So I need everybody to make sure that they just breathe, first of all. You need everybody to make sure that they breathe. And then from there, we have to be, again, intentional about the atmosphere of the building, right? Do we think enough about these test prep incentives and their impact? Do we think about all the considerations, right? What type of space are we curating? Is it hectic, where educators are stressed to the point of skill set amnesia, right? They're not being their best selves in the classroom. They're not able to function and deliver at their best performance level, right? Do we have transparent conversation that builds confidence? Where we're at this point where we're emphasizing the areas of strength, the things that they're really good at, that we're really anchoring down on that without creating negative feelings as much as possible. Now, when we're talking specifically about instruction, I won't say don't allow there to be some frustration. Don't avoid frustration fully, because that is really when learning happens. So if we're talking about in the direct instruction lane, right, in that classroom experience, right? It's called cognitive dissonance, where learning happens. So we have to give them space and time and strategies, though, to help them work through it. So the frustration about the system for the test prep incentives, that's something different than that point of frustration, that learning point when someone is learning something new, right? Yeah, we have to remember that education is an active profession, not a spectator sport. It's not. So, by minimizing, again, anxiety and anxiety producing situations, things that are unnecessary, the anxiety levels and reported anxiety, it continues to increase. Like, yes, the numbers were not cool at all. They were not kosher prior to the pandemic. But even more recently, like the new numbers are starting to come out, like late 22, now, basically, early to 2023. I read a stat earlier that said about 75% at the high school level. So 75% of high school students experience anxiety in some form. But we want to add to it by creating all these extra systems and checkpoints and did you and did. Okay. So again, minimizing those anxiety producing situations, leaning into those real conversations, building their confidence. Y'all, let's talk about middle school level. Now, the middle school numbers, people are saying in the research, the last research I saw said it's about 60% of middle school students. Okay. But some people are kind of arguing about that because middle school students, they're at the age where sometimes they talk the least about it, or they don't have all of the language and ability yet to express everything, but it's growing. It's growing and they're talking about it. And the reality is, for elementary, it's an even wider range and even more arguments, honestly, because the ways that the anxiety is displayed is just a wider range because of their age level, because just of the lack of tools to, in most cases, to deal with it. So they're often misunderstood and misdiagnosed. So those behavioral issues, those outbursts, which is a million of them in any category, right? The shutting down, lots of those things, it really could be anxiety, right? A child talking too much, a child not talking at all. It could be a million things. So that really, there people argue about the percentage for elementary. It's a bit harder to pinpoint. Yeah. So again, I cannot say it enough. When I talk about these test prep incentives, be clear. Make sure that you are really focusing on the progress, right? Not just we're not just doing check compliance. Did this happen? Did it really as personalized of an experience as possible, as much as possible. Okay. So someone said there's all progress in any area should be acknowledged for effective and sustained growth. Okay, Sheila said that. She says she agrees. Definitely, definitely. We have to, right? How, like, as adults, we do that, right? When people write their SMART goals, we'll talk about, is it measurable? What are you going to use to measure it? How often are you going to check in? What is your time frame you're giving yourself? Imagine if we set goals as adults and we either got it or we didn't. We don't do that. We make adjustments. We see, okay, well, this went well. We adjust and we continue to move forward. So why would we not acknowledge those moments of progress, those moments of greatness, those moments where they can be encouraged to adjust and continue to move forward? Why would we not do that? Right? Yeah. But I'll say this. So we have some more lives come in April where we're going to talk about really a lot more of this test prep considerations, test anxiety, things to look out for, strategies to do as you prep your young person, maybe as you prep yourself as an adult. If you have anxiety issues, so make sure that you follow, like, subscribe, share, right? Share in your different platforms, please. Y'all, but for this conversation, a takeaway, just really making sure that we understand that with any relational theme, Anything involving people, especially our young people, that we can't wing it, that we cannot not be intentional, all right? And we can't have inflexibility. When people are involved, we're going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to consider things differently. Yeah, that's it for today. Please, I was like, I wanted to do it a little bit later on a Friday. So if we have to make some adjustments come Monday, right? If we have to think about some things, maybe some young people came to your mind as you listen to this, let's make some adjustments, right? And really do uh, the considerations for these test prep incentives well, because we understand the impact a bit differently now. Bye, y'all.